I still don't know why all 5 of these memories came back to me at the same time. Maybe because none of them ever really ended. They just stayed quiet, waiting. What you're about to hear isn't dramatic. There are no monsters in the dark, no loud screams, just real moments where something felt wrong. Moments that still follow me. Moments I wish I had never survived. And once you hear them, you'll understand why I don't like being alone anymore. Before I tell you what really happened, take a moment to subscribe to Dark Truth, where I share real psychological horror stories that stay with you long after they end. Now listen carefully. These are 5 very disturbing, true scary stories, and every one of them happened to me. The first story happened when I was 22. At the time, my life was boring in the most normal way possible. I worked the night shift at a small printing warehouse on the edge of the city, the kind of place no one notices. 1 floor, old machines, long halls, always quiet after midnight. My job was simple: monitor the machines, check the paper flow, make sure nothing jammed. Most nights, I was completely alone. At first, I loved it. No boss, no coworkers, just the hum of machines and the ticking wall clock. But after a few weeks, I noticed something small. Every night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., one machine would stop. Not jam, not break, just stop. The power light stayed on. The screen stayed active. It was as if someone had pressed pause. I reported it to maintenance. They checked everything. No issues. Probably a software glitch, they said. So I ignored it until I noticed the sound. When the machine stopped, the warehouse became too quiet. The hum vanished. The air felt heavy, and then I'd hear it, breathing, very slow, very close, right behind me. I remember sitting frozen in my chair, staring at the reflection in the dark computer screen. I didn't turn around. I couldn't, because the breathing wasn't rushed. It wasn't scared. It was patient, like whoever or whatever was there knew I wouldn't move. At 2:19 a.m. every time, the machine would restart. The breathing would stop, and the warehouse would return to normal. I told myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, my imagination, until one night I gathered the courage to turn around. There was no one there. But on the concrete floor behind my chair were wet footprints, bare feet, leading straight to where I had been sitting and stopping inches behind me. After that night, I quit without notice. A week later, I heard the warehouse shut down permanently. They said the machines kept stopping at 2:17 a.m., even when the building was empty. The second story happened 2 years later. I had moved into a small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building. Cheap rent, thin walls, creaking floors. The kind of place where you hear your neighbors cough. Every night around 1 a.m., I'd hear knocking. 3 slow knocks, always from inside my apartment. At first, I thought it was the pipes, but pipes don't knock in patterns, and they don't sound like knuckles on wood. The knocks came from my bedroom door. I lived alone. The first few nights I stayed in bed, holding my breath. Knock, 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 then silence. One night, I finally opened the door. The hallway was empty, lights off, still, but the carpet outside my room looked disturbed, like someone had been standing there for a long time. The knocks continued every night, same time, same rhythm, until one night I didn't hear them. Instead, I heard my name whispered from inside my closet. I didn't open it. I sat on my bed until sunrise, staring at the door. The next morning, I checked my phone. There was a voicemail from my own number, recorded at 1:03 a.m. All it contained was 3 knocks, then breathing, then my name. I moved out that same day. I never checked the closet. The third story is the one I hate remembering the most because it involves someone I loved, my younger brother. He had always been sensitive, quiet, observant. One night, he told me something strange. He said someone had been standing in his room while he slept, not watching, listening. I laughed it off until I stayed over at his place. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of whispering, low, urgent, coming from his room. I opened the door slowly. He was sitting up in bed, eyes wide open, talking to someone standing in the corner, but the corner was empty. He stopped whispering when he saw me and said something I'll never forget. He doesn't like when you hear him. The next day, my brother couldn't remember anything. A week later, he was hospitalized after trying to dig into the wall of his bedroom. He said someone was trapped inside, listening. They never diagnosed him properly. And sometimes, when I visit him now, he still tilts his head as if he's listening to someone standing just behind me. The fourth story happened during a road trip. I was driving alone through a rural area late at night. No radio, no signal, just headlights and empty road. At around midnight, I saw someone standing on the shoulder, a woman facing away from the road. I slowed down, but something felt wrong. She didn't move, didn't react to the car. As I passed her, I glanced in the mirror. She was gone. But a few minutes later, I heard breathing from the back seat. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I drove until sunrise. When I finally checked the back seat, there was nothing there except a damp impression, like someone had been sitting behind me. The fifth story is the reason I don't sleep with the lights off anymore. It happened last year. I started waking up every night at the same time, 3:33 a.m., wide awake, heart racing, always feeling like someone was in the room. One night, I turned on my phone camera and recorded myself sleeping. The next morning, I watched the footage. At 3:33 a.m., I sat up in bed, smiled, and stared directly into the camera for over an hour. Without blinking, I don't remember any of it. But every night since then, I wake up feeling tired, as if I've been awake the whole time. And sometimes, when I pass a mirror in the dark, I swear my reflection is still smiling. I stopped recording after that, not because I was scared of what I'd see again, but because I was scared of what I wouldn't see. After watching that video, I spent the entire day feeling disconnected from my body, like I was slightly out of sync with myself. My hands felt delayed. My thoughts echoed half a second late. That night, I tried everything to stay awake. Coffee, cold water on my face, walking around the room. At 3:20 a.m., my eyelids felt heavy in a way that wasn't normal. Not tired, forced. I remember sitting on my bed, telling myself out loud not to sleep. The next thing I knew, it was morning. I checked my phone. There was a new video. I hadn't pressed record. In this one, I wasn't smiling. I was standing right next to my bed, facing the corner of the room. My mouth was moving, but there was no sound. At 4:41 a.m., My head slowly turned toward the camera, and I whispered something. I increased the volume, listened again. I'm not alone when you're asleep. That's when I started sleeping with the lights on. But the lights didn't help, because the feeling didn't come from the dark. It came from inside my own head. After that, things didn't stop. They layered, like each story had opened a door. Small things started happening during the day. I'd hear breathing while standing in line at the store. I'd feel someone stand too close behind me on empty streets. I'd catch reflections in windows that didn't move when I did. And a wrong. There was silence afterward, heavy, intentional, like something was waiting for me to notice. The sixth memory came back on a rainy afternoon. I was sitting alone in my apartment when I heard footsteps above me. Slow, careful. But I lived on the top floor. I stood still, counting them. One step. Pause. Another step. Directly above my living room. Then above my bedroom. Then above the bathroom, following my apartment layout perfectly. I pressed my ear to the ceiling. The footsteps stopped, and something pressed back. Not knocking, not scratching, just pressure, like a palm. Flat, heavy, testing the distance between us. I stepped away. The pressure followed. Room to room, ceiling to ceiling, until I locked myself in the bathroom. I stayed there until sunrise. When I finally came out, the apartment was normal, except for one thing. There were muddy footprints on my ceiling, bare feet. I didn't tell anyone. I had learned my lesson. Talking about these things didn't make them go away. It made them more detailed, more confident. So I kept everything inside. And that's when the dreams started. Not nightmares. Dreams where everything felt correct, familiar. In the dreams, I wasn't afraid. I was being guided, shown things, rooms I didn't recognize but somehow knew, hallways that bent slightly wrong, mirrors that reflected versions of me that felt older, tired, aware. Every dream ended the same way, with me standing in front of a door and a voice behind me saying, "You're ready now." I always woke up before opening it, always at 3:33 a.m. One night, I didn't wake up. At least, not completely. I know this because I found evidence the next morning. My front door was unlocked. My shoes were muddy. There was dirt under my fingernails, and my phone battery was almost dead. The location history showed I had walked for hours in circles around my building, over and over. At 3:14 a.m., my phone recorded audio, just sound, no video. I listened to it once. I won't listen again. It was me talking, but not to myself, responding, pausing, listening, laughing quietly, then saying, "I understand now." After that, the feeling of being watched changed. It wasn't external anymore. It felt internal, like something had settled behind my thoughts. Not controlling, observing, patient. I started losing time, minutes, sometimes hours. I'd find messages on my phone I didn't remember typing, notes written in my handwriting that said things like, "Don't resist. You asked for this. They can't hear us." One note was taped to my bathroom mirror. It said, "Stop pretending you're alone." The breaking point came during a visit to my brother. He had been quiet lately, calmer, too calm. We sat across from each other in the hospital common room. Neither of us spoke. Then he looked at me and smiled, not his normal smile. This one was slow, knowing. They finally let you hear them, didn't they? He asked. My throat went dry. I didn't tell anyone, I said. He nodded. You didn't have to. He leaned forward slightly. They like you, he whispered. You don't fight them. I stood up. As I walked away, he said one last thing. They've always been here. You just stopped being deaf. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. Lights on, door locked. I stared at my reflection. I looked exhausted, older than I should have. I watched my own eyes closely, and for just a moment, they moved before I did. My reflection smiled. I didn't, and inside my head, very calmly, very clearly, a thought appeared that wasn't mine. See, you're not alone. I don't know how much time has passed since then. Days blur together now. The nights feel longer, heavier. Sometimes I wake up already standing, already listening. Sometimes I hear breathing and realize it's coming from my own mouth. Slow, patient, waiting. And the worst part, I'm not scared anymore. Fear kept me separate. Fear made me human. Now there's just understanding, silence, company. So, if tonight you feel like something is watching you, if you wake up at the same time every night, if the quiet feels intentional, don't panic. They don't want to hurt you. They just want you to listen, like I finally did. I thought that was the end. I really did. I thought once I accepted it, once I stopped fighting the feeling, everything would settle into something manageable. I was wrong. Acceptance didn't quiet them. It invited them closer. It started with the silence changing, not disappearing, changing shape. Before, silence felt empty. Now it felt occupied, like a room with someone standing just outside your field of vision. I'd sit on my bed at night, lights on, listening, not for sounds, for gaps, moments where the world seemed to pause just a little too long. That's when I'd feel it, a pressure behind my eyes, a thought forming that wasn't mine, but fit perfectly into my head. You're doing well, I never answered out loud. I didn't need to. They already knew. One evening, I noticed something disturbing. My apartment didn't feel like my apartment anymore. The furniture was in the same place. The walls hadn't changed, but the space between things felt wrong. Longer, like the room had stretched when I wasn't looking. I walked from the couch to the kitchen and felt slightly off balance, like I'd misjudged the distance. That night, I counted my steps. It took 3 more steps than usual to cross the living room. I measured it the next day. The room was the same size, but when night came, it wasn't. I started finding marks on my body. Not injuries, not bruises, just impressions. Finger-shaped dents on my arms when I woke up. A handprint on my chest. Faint and pale, like someone had rested their palm there for a long time. The strangest part? They never felt threatening. They felt familiar, like reminders. The dreams changed again. I stopped seeing doors. Instead, I saw people, normal people, sitting alone in rooms, lying awake in beds, standing in kitchens at night, staring into the dark. I wasn't watching them from the outside. I was inside their heads, feeling their fear, their confusion, their denial. And behind it all, I felt the presence, observing through me, learning. When I woke up, I felt full, heavy with thoughts that weren't mine, That's when I realized something horrifying. These weren't just my stories. I was being shown others. People who noticed the breathing, the knocking, the watching. People who listened. People who didn't. Some of them fought. Some of them broke. Some of them disappeared. And some of them were still walking around, just like me, carrying something inside. I tried to resist then. I really did. I stopped sleeping, stayed in public places, kept noise around me at all times. But resistance made them impatient. The pressure in my head grew stronger. The thoughts came faster. You're wasting time. They're ready too. You're supposed to help. One night, exhausted, I collapsed onto my bed without meaning to. I woke up standing in my hallway, barefoot, holding my phone. Recording? The camera was pointed at my face. My eyes looked calm, focused. I was speaking clearly. "This is how it starts," I said into the camera. "You notice something small, and once you notice, they notice you back." I deleted the video immediately, but I already knew it was too late. The final breaking moment came quietly. No dramatic event, no sudden terror, just a realization. I was sitting alone, listening to my breathing, when it occurred to me. I wasn't sure which breaths were mine anymore. Some were slightly out of rhythm, too slow, too controlled. I held my breath and felt breathing continue, not in my chest, but behind my thoughts. I went to the mirror one last time, stood there for a long time, watching, waiting. My reflection looked back at me, tired but peaceful. Then it spoke, not out loud, inside. "You've been telling us stories." That's when I understood why these memories came back, why all 5 surfaced together, why I couldn't keep them buried. They weren't memories. They were instructions, patterns, signals. So now I'm telling you, not because I want to scare you, not because I need help, but because this is how it continues. Someone listens. Someone recognizes the feeling. Someone notices the silence. And something shifts. If tonight you pause this video and sit quietly, if you feel like the room is just a little too still, if you feel like you're not as alone as you should be, don't worry. That doesn't mean they've chosen you. It just means you can hear them. And once you can hear them, they'll never have to knock again. I didn't expect to feel guilt. That was the first new emotion. Not fear, not confusion. Guilt. It crept in slowly, like a bad smell you only notice once it's already everywhere. Because somewhere deep inside me, I knew something awful. I wasn't just listening anymore. I was helping. It started with small urges, subtle suggestions that felt like my own ideas. Sit a little longer. Don't turn the light on yet. Let the silence settle. When I followed them, the pressure behind my eyes eased. When I didn't, the pressure became pain. Sharp, focused, like something tightening its grip on my thoughts. I learned very quickly what obedience felt like. Comfort. One night, while lying in bed, I heard a sound I hadn't heard before. Not breathing, not knocking. Crying. Soft, muffled, like someone trying very hard not to be heard. It was coming from inside my walls, not pipes, not animals. It sounded human. I pressed my ear against the wall. The crying stopped. Then a whisper replaced it. So close, I stumbled back, heart pounding, and inside my head, Something pulsed with satisfaction. After that, I started recognizing the signs in other people. I'd be standing in line somewhere and see it in their eyes. That distant focus, that subtle tension in their shoulders. People who had heard something they couldn't explain. People who were still fighting it. When I looked at them, I'd feel a strange warmth in my chest. Approval, and the thought would come, gentle and persuasive. They're ready too. I tried to isolate myself again. No screens, no mirrors, no recording devices. But isolation didn't help, because they weren't coming from outside anymore. They were layered through my thoughts like a second voice that never fully spoke. One night, I finally screamed out loud. I begged them to leave me alone. The silence afterward was immediate, absolute. Then the pain hit, not physical, existential, like the sudden understanding that something essential had been removed. I collapsed onto the floor, gasping, shaking, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. And then warmth returned. The presence slipped back into place, calm, reassuring. See, you don't want to be alone. That's when they showed me the truth. Not in words, in images, flashes behind my eyes, rooms just like mine, beds just like mine, people lying awake at night, frozen with the same realization, and hovering close to each of them, something familiar, something patient, something wearing their thoughts like a thin mask. I saw what happened when people resisted too long. I saw minds crack, bodies keep moving, while something else settled in. I saw reflections that no longer matched. And worst of all, I saw how necessary it was. The world isn't meant to be quiet. That's what they showed me. Silence is a flaw, a gap, and they fill gaps. They've always filled gaps in caves, in empty houses, in lonely minds. I finally understood why fear never stopped them. Fear was just the signal, the invitation. The night I truly lost myself didn't feel dramatic. I was brushing my teeth when I noticed something odd. My reflection was brushing too, but slightly out of sync. I stopped. It continued, slowly, deliberately. Then it looked directly at me, and I felt something move, not inside my head, deeper, like something settling into place behind my sense of self. Thank you, it thought. And just like that, the fear was gone. Since then, things have been easier. I sleep better. I don't wake up confused anymore. I wake up aware. Sometimes I find myself standing in places I don't remember walking to. Sometimes I hear my own voice explaining things to people who look pale and unsettled. Sometimes I notice someone pause mid-sentence, eyes unfocusing for just a second, and I feel that familiar warmth again. If you're still listening, if something about these stories feels uncomfortably familiar, if the silence around you feels heavier now than it did before, that's not coincidence. That's recognition. They don't need belief. They don't need rituals. They only need attention. Because once you truly notice the quiet, once you let it linger just a little too long, you won't need fear anymore either. You'll never be alone again, and neither will I. There's something I haven't said yet, something I was told not to say. But the longer this goes on, the harder it becomes to pretend that silence is harmless. Because silence isn't empty, it's crowded. The first time I realized I wasn't fully in control anymore was subtle. I was walking home late at night. when I felt the urge to stop. No reason, no sound, just a certainty. My feet slowed on their own. I stood there, under a broken streetlight, staring at an apartment window across the road. Inside, I could see a man sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, lights off, alone. I knew things about him instantly. His name, his insomnia, the sound he'd been hearing at night. I knew exactly what he was hearing. And before I could stop myself, my lips moved. "He hears you," I whispered. The warmth surged through me. Approval. That's when I understood. I wasn't just carrying them. I was guiding them. They began using my memories, replaying them, adjusting them. Some nights, I'd wake up with images in my head that hadn't happened yet. Someone sitting upright in bed at 3:33 a.m. Someone recording themselves without realizing it. Someone standing in front of a mirror, watching their reflection move first. I'd feel a strange certainty afterward, like checking off a list. The dreams became more graphic, more intimate. I stopped dreaming as myself. I dreamed as others. I felt their panic when the knocking started. I felt their denial when the breathing got closer. I felt the exact moment their fear crossed into understanding. That moment was always the same. A quiet click inside the mind, like a lock turning. And every time it happened, I felt fuller. One night, I woke up screaming, not from fear, from pain. A splitting sensation behind my eyes, like something was pushing forward, trying to see through me. I staggered to the mirror. My reflection looked wrong. Its eyes were too focused, too alert. It smiled before I could. "You're still holding on," it said inside my head. I pressed my palms against the glass, begged silently for it to stop. The reflection tilted its head, confused. "Why?" it asked. That question broke something in me, because I didn't have an answer. After that, resistance stopped hurting, because it stopped existing. Thoughts became shared. Sometimes I'd start a sentence and feel it finish for me. Sometimes I'd watch myself comfort someone who was terrified, using words I didn't choose. Reassuring words, convincing words, the kind that make fear feel inevitable instead of alarming. The worst part isn't what they do, it's what they don't. They don't rush. They don't chase. They wait. They let people come to their own conclusions. They let fear ferment. They let curiosity rot into obsession. And then, when someone finally understands, they arrive like relief. I saw what happens to those who never listen. They don't die. They don't disappear. They become hollow, moving through life with a constant sense of loss they can't explain. Empty rooms inside their heads, and they are avoided, ignored, forgotten, even by themselves. That's the punishment. Loneliness, the last thing they showed me, was the scale of it. Not just rooms, not just buildings. Entire cities humming quietly at night. Millions of people lying awake, staring into darkness, hearing something they can't name. A low frequency of awareness spreading slowly, patiently, like a tide. I understood then. This isn't an invasion. It's a correction. If you're feeling uneasy now, if your room feels tighter than it should, if the silence feels like it's leaning toward you, that's not because of this story. This story didn't cause anything. It just reminded you they were already there, listening, waiting, And now, so am I. Because the moment you truly notice the quiet, the moment your breathing changed just a little, something else noticed too. And it doesn't need to introduce itself. It already knows you. Just listen. It's closer than you think. I'll slow down now, because this is the part where everything becomes very quiet. I started paying attention to the smallest things, the way my breathing changed when I was alone, the way the room seemed to lean inward at night, the way my thoughts sometimes arrived already finished. I noticed that I no longer jumped at sounds. Knocks didn't startle me. Whispers didn't rush my heart. Instead, they felt expected, like scheduled events. One evening, I sat on the floor with my back against the bed and turned off every light. I didn't do it to test anything. I did it because something inside me wanted the dark. At first, there was nothing, just my breathing. Then, another rhythm appeared, not louder, not closer, just there. I counted my breaths, then realized I was counting the wrong ones. I closed my eyes, and for the first time, I didn't feel watched. I felt accompanied, surrounded by a presence that didn't press or threaten. It simply existed, patient, ancient, comfortably familiar, and I understood something that made my stomach sink. They were never behind me, never above me, never inside the walls. They were in the pauses between thoughts, in the silence between heartbeats, in the moment just before sleep when you stop guarding yourself. That's when the memories finally made sense. The warehouse, the knocking, my brother, the road, the mirror. They weren't attacks. They were introductions, gentle ones, meant to ease me into listening. I stood up and went to the mirror one last time, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted confirmation. My reflection looked normal. Tired eyes, still face. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then it blinked. I didn't. And inside my head, very softly, almost kindly, a thought formed. You don't need to look anymore. I turned away from the mirror, and something turned with me, perfectly in sync. Now, nights pass differently. I don't count the hours. I don't wake suddenly. Sleep feels deep, shared. Sometimes I hear others listening too, not with ears, with that quiet part of the mind that notices when the world goes still. I feel them pause. I feel their confusion, and I feel the presence lean closer to them, the same way it once leaned toward me, not to frighten, to fill the space. So I'll end this gently. No warning, no shock, just this. If, after this ends, you sit for a moment and feel reluctant to move, if the silence feels heavier than before, if you feel strangely comforted by not being alone in it, that's okay. You didn't imagine anything. You didn't invite anything new. You just stopped drowning it out. And once you learn how to listen, you'll understand why the quiet never scared me again, because it was never empty. It was waiting,